Hello, this is an assessment for restoration of a Bechstein 2 meters long, made in about 1900, and so I'm assessing it for a client who wants us to restore it. First of all, let's look at the casework, and it's ebonized, what they called it ebonized in those days, and nowadays pianos are generally polyester. So generally the case, there's no veneer missing, but there's lots of crazing, and we'll see on the top of the piano. So that's a case for if you're going to fully restore the whole piano, then obviously you would want to do that, especially if you want to add value to the piano, because the polish will really take the value, like this, really takes value off the piano. Now this is typical crazing on Bechsteins. It really happens in nearly all of them at this age. So there's nothing you can do to that other than strip it and either French polish it or polyester. And polyester is what is on all modern pianos. It is possible to French polish, but it's much more expensive, takes a lot longer. We'd have to quote separately on that. But polyester is a standard job that's done, and we know how much that's going to be. So you can see there's a real candidate for repolishing. As I say, if you're going to restore the rest of the piano, then to add value to the piano, you really do need to finish the case as well. We have had some French polish, but generally it's so much more expensive, so much longer. We'll have to quote separately on that. But polyestering is very common, but a lot of people don't really want that. They want the original sort of authentic type of finish. I'm mentioning all of that because I do get comments about that, and I totally agree. The old finish is nicer than polyester in a way, but polyester is really perfect, and it will add value to the piano unless it's French polish really properly, and that's, as I say, extremely difficult job. So looking at the case, you can see there's no veneer missing really, which is good news. The music stand is broken, as you can see here. That's pretty typical of Bechsteins. It very often happens. It's a repair we're used to doing, and this music stand, style of music stand, suggests, I would think, 1900 or slightly before. It's really hard to date the piano because the serial number's not on it, but we've used the number underneath the piano, which does give us some idea of date. If the serial number is missing on a Bechstein, then usually there's a number underneath the piano. Almost invariably you'll find a large stamped number underneath the piano, which you can roughly date it. We have a list of correlation between that and the actual age. And this is a period of time when Bechstein weren't quite sure what to call their piano. Let's say it is 1900, because this is not a Model 5. Previous to this is a Model 5 which has a fishtail here, and this goes round. There's plenty of Model 5 Bechsteins, and I'll try and link to a photo of that for you. The inside of the piano, it has been restored at some stage. There's a couple of new strings there, as you can see. They put both strings in, because actually if you put one in, it usually doesn't match very well with the other. And it sounds quite a good match. There's quite a good job there. There's no moth in the felts, which is very encouraging, because so many pianos are damaged by moths, as we said before. And the stringing is reasonably well done as well. The acoustic side of the piano is reasonable, but if you're going to restore the rest of it and the casework, and we'll look at the action in a minute, then you might want to have this all restored as well, because then it looks really pristine and certainly adds value to the piano. But it's not essential. There's one string missing here. I don't know if you can see where it is. There's one with 2 here instead of 3. There's one string missing, so that's not that important. Someone's tied it on there. If you break a string, by the way, you can normally use the same string again, just wind it down and back up again. Some makes the piano like Bosendorf you can't do that to, but Steinway's Bechsteins you can use the same string again. The keys are perfect ivory, almost perfect. There's a little chip there which we can disguise and repair quite well, I think, and they need buffing. You may not be able to see here, but they're very dull. They do get dull with time, and if they're not buffed, then they tend to get dirty with the dirt tends to cling to them. And you can also see there they've really got worn there, so you can see that's piano being used a lot. That we black that in normally. The pedals are extremely low. I think it's about 3 centimeters from the floor. Bechstein pedals are extremely low, which is useful. There's standard leg room here, but it does mean if you are a tall person, you've got plenty of scope for putting tall caster cups underneath there to raise the height of the piano, so that your knees aren't hitting here. Well, the piano has been restrung, and quite large tuning pins, as you'd often find when a piano has been restrung, especially in the bass, do go to being very large tuning pins in the bass, and you couldn't really, if you wanted to restring, I don't think there's much bigger, one size up you could go there, so you'd have a problem because you always have to change the tuning pins and put larger ones in when you restring, so that would be difficult. Listening to the tone though, the strings are good. See, that one is not regulated properly, and also we'll look at the hammer in a minute and see it's very worn. But the underlying tone is excellent, and it already sounds good. So as I said, acoustically you wouldn't have to have it done. Though if you're having the rest of the piano done, then and you did want to restring, it would improve it, and then you would have to change the pin block because you've already got large tuning pins. So this pin block needs changing if you're going to restring the piano. Now, this piano has a tied action, which you get on all Bechsteins of this age. So it's tied means that the top and the bottom are tied to each other. You have to pull this out if you want to work on it. And so you have to. That's a rocker system. It's also harder to regulate, and we'll often change the rocker system. It's not essential in terms of the touch of the piano, and there are reasons why they did the rocker system, but it's a nuisance when you want to regulate it and you have to pull all these out to take the top action off. So capstans are much more sensible, and that's commonly done, that the rocker system is replaced with a capstan system. Now the hammers are extremely worn, so if you look at the top of it, too much hammer's hitting the string, and therefore it's dulling the harmonics. As it hits the string, it actually cancels out the clear harmonics, and if you reface this, then you're going to get more of a point and it'll be much better. But they're too far gone to reface, and they're a bit soft as well, so we would definitely replace those. And if you're replacing the hammers, then I would replace the shanks and the rollers too, because the rollers start getting flat and the whole thing drops. In fact, the blow distance is about 52 and it should be about 48. That's the distance from the hammer to the string. So definitely a case of changing hammers, shanks and rollers. And the other reason is because this hinge here is loose on a lot of them. I don't know if you'll be able to see on the video, but I can feel it as it's moving it from side to side. This hinge is loose, makes it the touch is, well, all the hinges vary slightly, so to get an even touch you really need to replace these hinges. So it's hammers, and we put top quality German hammers on, shanks, the Renner or Arbel shanks, and rollers here, which are integrated into the shanks. You can potentially change the hammer and the roller and not the shank, but as these hinges are worn, then it's sensible to change the whole lot, and not more expensive in terms of time and not much more in terms of the cost of it either. So it's really a case of full restoration, I would suggest. Acoustic restoration isn't essential, but if you're having the rest done, and cosmetically as well, if you're going to do the whole piano, it would be sensible to do. And while we've got the piano, it would be sensible to do the whole thing. The hammers are very worn. It's got a tied action, so it's been restrung already with large pins in the bass, so really the rest plank needs changing. I didn't mention that the hammers are catching the back check because they're so low. That's something I should perhaps have shown you. Because the hammers are so low down, the back check is touching the hammer, and when you press the key you can actually feel it as a resistance, and that's quite common when the hammers are down. So obviously reducing the hammer blow will solve that straight away. In other words, lifting the hammer up a bit, then it won't catch the back check. But if you look at the rest of it, buffing the keys is important so they don't attract the dirt. And I haven't done the weighting of the keys because when the hammers are changed, that'll obviously be redone anyway. But normally we set the middle C at about 50 grams as you get on a new piano, and then try and replicate a new piano as much as you possibly can so the touch is as good as. In fact, Bechstein touch is beautiful, so I would consider it to be better than a new piano. So that's an assessment for restoration of a Bechstein 2 meters long, and it's just after the Model 5 because it doesn't have a fishtail. So it's when Bechstein were not quite sure what to call them, and I've actually called it on the worksheet a 5A, and it's similar to that, but it's not actually got the 5A written on it. There's quite a lot of different ideas that Bechstein were trying until they came up with the Model B. and then it was standard. Now the touch is extremely bad, as it's catching, and I mentioned that, and also there's no proper checking, so that's obviously got to be done. But what we're saying is the whole piano needs restoring, really. It's a pretty obvious case, and they're such beautiful touch and tone when they're finished off, and beautiful pianos all together. And one of our favourites. So I was so pleased to get the opportunity to assess the piano. If you've got a Bechstein Grand and you'd like it to be assessed, we'd love to do that for you. Please write to info@robertspianos.com. Thank you very much for listening.